Welcome to the Market Buzz. I'm Greg Schnell, the Canadian technician, and I'm here to host the show with you. We look at long time frame trades on weekly charts. Please follow me on Twitter and on my articles page for any more trade ideas. So we had a nice rally yesterday. That makes the market pretty interesting here, and I think the biggest thing that I want to talk about today is that it is Fed Day, and just to give you some relative scale on the charts, what I'm a little bit puzzled about. And then healthcare, travel and leisure have been, they're starting to pick up, and so those are some of the interesting areas. Materials are coming off lows, and in commodities, you really want to trade near the lows. I'm not going to cover a lot of the materials today because I cover them up quite a bit on the weekend reviews, but they're really starting to try and turn up. So I think if the trade agreement with the US and China could get some legs under it, those would probably rocket pretty well. Copper had a great day yesterday. So semis are up big as well yesterday. So usually things like copper and semis show renewed influence towards a bull market. So I'm impressed by those. And gambling stocks are starting to get set up here. So we want to cover off some of those today, and I'll try and get into them. Again, I'm not covering the software stocks because I think those are pretty well covered by Tom and Aaron in their regular show. So I'm going to try and do some different places to look for ideas. Okay, so let's get over into the charts. And one of the things, let's just start with the S&P 500. And these lines on the chart here are the lines recognizing the Fed meetings, the dates of the Fed meetings. And one of the concerns that I've mentioned multiple times is we had this setup, and on the setup, what we find is the Fed market rolled over there. This was right in the middle of the market top, and this was on the market top back on May 1st. So here we come down, and now we're rallying up. The interesting part is after this May top, the next Fed meeting market fell down, and after this top, it was a couple of days later, but the Fed meeting really started to cause some gaps down, and we ended up down below that. So I'm watching quite closely here to see if we can actually pull this off. One of the things that's interesting is recently we had the quietest volume going back in a year, with the exception of the half day in November. So the market is really pausing here, I'll say, and much like it did as it headed into the final market high in April there, not a long-term market high, just an intermediate high, but we had really quiet volume in the middle of April, and then as we got towards the Fed meeting, it increased a little bit. Yesterday was average volume, but again, I've just got a line in here at 2 billion for a reference line, and we're we were down at 1.5 billion for 3 or 4 days in a row there, and yesterday we just got up to 2 billion. So there were some buyers stepping up, but and it was better than the day before. Let's just say it is quiet. Okay, so working from there, I wanted to get into a couple of things, and these are some of the sectors that started to show up on my list to work through on the weekend, and these sectors are quite. I've set it up for 1 week here, but medical is showing up in here and healthcare as two of the areas. The chemicals, I see it. I went to look at it. There's not a whole bunch going on in that area, but they are starting to give me an area that I want to go and look at. And then telecom is okay. I think the problem is I don't feel like the charts have a lot more in them. So we'll keep watching, but this medical equipment area looks really well set up in healthcare. So I want to focus on those. And I know many people think that we're in a big bull market and those areas won't perform, but I'll show you the charts and let you make your own mind up. This consumer services is obviously a big one, and we'll probably talk about that one on Friday. After we'll have the results from the Fed meeting, and we'll see if there's more information there. This household goods is obviously another defensive area. So those are kind of the ones that are starting to show up. And a new one that showed up this week was gambling. So we're going to talk a little bit about those stocks because they are set up nicely. So here we have the gambling index, and you can see on my PPO, we bounced up here and we're turning around here and trying to turn back higher. So this is quite nice and bouncing off the 40-week moving average and moving above the 10-week average, coiled up quite nicely. The full stochastic is starting to pop, and the RSI, after hitting 30 down here, is trying to bounce off this 40 level, which is usually one of the places to look for bull market price action. So if I just annotate this chart, what we see is that when it stays above the 40 level, I'll make that line a little darker. When it stays above the 40 level, what we notice is typically that's an uptrend. And so usually it's the first bounce coming out of the low that it stays above 40 that's a pretty attractive place. And I would suggest we're near there. The 40-week moving average is trying to turn here. It's flat at best. And then if we can start to go up, this is a nice entry, and I would relate it to something in here, maybe here, whatever. The bottom line is we're starting to get improvement, and it's this PPO moving back around the 0 level and starting to accelerate that particularly makes me interested in it. So the point of the exercise is we want to catch these as they start to turn. We don't want to wait for them to get a long way advanced. If you're a breakout buyer, obviously we can always look at hitting new highs in some of the individual stocks. We'll do that. We'll check that out as well. So here's the medical equipment index, and what we see here is this is just a beautiful uptrending chart, and it's had some big pullbacks in here, 20% or whatever, but we're breaking out to new highs on this medical index and in a pretty important place. So the one thing that I would say is the momentum is turning back up. The full stochastic is back above 80, and this looks like a pretty nice entry. On the pullback, it only got to 40% on the RSI, so that still suggests to me that this thing wants to stay in bull market mode. And so as long as it continues to hold these higher highs, I think you can be an owner here and just use 1800 as your guide. We're probably going to trade the individual stocks, but this is a way to just get a picture on what the group is doing. So I just want to jump in here. So looking at the healthcare area, they've moved up a little bit last week. This medical supplies was a little bit quiet, but the pharmaceuticals are really, really rocking. And medical equipment looked nice. Healthcare providers, not so nice. So when I say not so nice, that chart's pretty much downtrending. If anything, if you're a bottom buyer, that one might be starting to turn up a little bit higher. We're looking for 3-month highs on the chart there. Biotechnology, this one's been downtrending for a while. Right now it's got a higher low, so that's another place to look. The medical equipment, you can see this is breaking out, and it's really a nice surge that we've just seen in the past week. And pharmaceuticals, that's the reason I'm interested there. That one looks like it's ready to break out of this base. And then medical equipment has been trending higher, or medical supplies has been trending higher. The nice parts of some of these, let's just go look. Here's the healthcare equipment and services. And you can see that there was a gentle downtrend here, and we're starting to break out of that downtrend. So all of these areas start to look nice. And here's the medical equipment group. And again, if we just do it, so here I've sorted it intraday. If you sort it by 1 week, you can just see some of these are having big moves, but these are small stocks. So, it's hard to look to those names for growth, but that one's just crazy. It's just going ballistic here. So I don't know what they do, but it's pretty impressive chart. These other ones are not making a move yet, but this Katera is just starting to get going. The scooter ranking is starting to improve up to 73%. If we start on the scooter ranking, and again, this ranks stocks compared to other stocks in their size peer. So as an example, this scooter ranking is compared to the small cap stocks, and this scooter ranking is compared to the large cap stocks. So these are not based on the same table. So you might see different chart shapes starting to show up. And I think it's pretty important to trade what you're comfortable with. So if you love volatility, then you're going to like a small cap. If you hate volatility, obviously, you're going to want something more institutionally owned, something like a large cap. So when we look at these stocks, you can see this Mettler Toledo. This thing's just gone ballistic. Here's Danaher. These are crazy good charts. And again, if you're trying to find something breaking out, usually you're better off to look at something down in the 75% range on the Scooter ranking. How do you? These charts are just beautiful. They're just starting to get going. Thermo Fisher, Stryker Corp, Boston Scientific. This one, Irhythmic, looks to me like it's making a new 2 or 3 month high. They're trying to get going. Biorad, this is a nice setup. That's a nice big cup with a handle. Tactile Systems, this one's very volatile. Lots of movement there both ways. And Smith, this one's Smith and Nephew trying to move. Katera that I mentioned earlier, and Atron. So hopefully you're getting an idea. Some of these charts are really starting to pick up. Let's go look at some of these bigger ones, the Thermo Fisher chart. And again, just getting through this 282 here, but I like to look at them on a weekly chart. What you just see here is this is a nice steady uptrending stock, and it's breaking out again. Full stochastic has bounced above 50, and look at the Scooter ranking. It's been in the top half for the last 2 years. That's just a nice safe entry, and it looks like it wants to keep on going. Going back to the other page here, we'll just one more, and I lost my sort order. Let me just go fix that. And then down here, we were looking Stryker Corp and Boston Scientific. Let's go in here. And so, again, breaking out to new highs, peak when the overall market peaked in September. March high actually pulled back a little before the rest of the market. And now it looks like it's getting set up to break out of this pattern here. So looks quite nice on the daily, on the weekly chart. Nice clean rhythm, and the momentum is just coming down here, bouncing off near zero and starting to break through this trend line and head higher again. This looks like a nice entry and just probably a comfortable place to look at owning the stock. Okay, let's go back again into our list and just click that down here. So, and you can see that the Scooter ranking is real time, and that's why these that were grouped together before are no longer. And here's Stryker Corp. Maybe I'll just open it on a separate panel. And what we see again is this one's trying to shoot through to new highs. And when we look at it on a weekly chart, it ran up, pulled back, and now looks like it's ready to try and make it another leg higher. So all of these together are working pretty well. Lastly, let's just go back to that list and check for one more thing here. Just go look at some of these other large caps. This one broke out a few weeks ago, but the price action is just starting. The Scooter rankings just starting to get improved here, and I think it's because of these big gaps in the chart. But if you look across the page, we've got lots in here, lots of reasons to like this stock. And this was a big uptrend. It's built some sort of a base consolidation pattern here, and now look like it wants to start to break to the upside. So that's a very comfortable place on the chart as well. Okay, and then I think I did it wrong again. Sorry about that. Cancel. Maybe with that, I'll take a break here. We're going to cut away to a commercial, and when we come back, we'll go look at some of the other sectors that I mentioned as well. Okay, thank you. Now we're going to go look at some of these pharmaceutical names, and quite frankly, the charts are stunning. We have, just some of the moves are obviously big. That's a very volatile group. But I think the important thing to be aware of is just like look at the, if we sort by large cap, and maybe I should just do that. So all of these here are so small, they don't have a Scooter ranking, but they're extremely volatile and lots of interesting charts in there. But here's Zoetis, and I mean, that chart's just going ballistic, but I would have trouble buying it when it's broken out so far. But you can see a lot of these are just starting to get going, even in the last week or two here. This Abbott Labs looks like it wants to take off. Merck is just breaking out. McKesson, $135. That looks like a level that you just want to buy if it gets through. It's been basing and basing and basing. Looks like it's ready to go. Same thing here for Novo. Really, these charts are shaping up nicely. And I think, again, a lot of them pay dividends, large cap stocks, but these are nice to hold. This, even GlaxoSmithKline here, the Scooter ranking says 44. But I think we'd agree this $40 level looks pretty important on the chart, and as it tries to go through. The one thing I will say is that the scale is only $5 on that whole chart. So it's a little too flat for me. I think you want to find something with a little bit more horsepower if you're going to try and outperform the market. So this one's got a $2 scale on the side, so the same thing kind of applies. This McKesson, I like this one. This one's got a lot more range on it. There's at least 30 or 40% on the side of the chart. So something to look for there. When you look at these stocks, and again, we can go all the way down to Eli Lilly or whatever, it all depends on the type of buying style you have. But if you like to buy breakouts, and on these large cap stocks, I think breakouts are pretty important. I think on the small caps, you want to stay with the very strongest in the small caps because they're extremely volatile. And if we get down here into some of these mid caps, again, none of these, look at just as a group. So here's all the mid caps. And then what you notice is that only one of them has a Scooter ranking greater than 50. And so the one thing I would suggest on there is it looks more difficult to find a winner. And this Bausch health company, I think this was Bausch and Lomb, the contact lens company, formerly Valiant. And, it's just, if anything, you're buying it down near support, but these are harder to own. And, you want to try and find something in an uptrend. So here's some of these small caps. And again, in biotechs, it's just a crazy world. So this one has a 99, probably because of the spike on the chart. But it's definitely pulled back. And now you probably want that base to form. And if it could get back above $17 or $20, then maybe there's something there. Here's Syndax Pharmaceuticals. This one's just breaking out this week. That looks pretty impressive. Agile Therapeutics. This one looks like it's setting up for a breakout. So you could keep your mind or your eye on these as they go. This one's been rising for a while. Sage Therapeutics, this one broke out of that 160 layer and just is grinding higher, but at least it's higher and nothing wrong with that. This one has just been a rocket ship. I'd have trouble buying into that after an 80% move. This one I like, breaking out $15 to $16, just starting to get going. And if we just right click on this and open in a new tab, one of the things to watch for here is as this starts to accelerate, that chart just doesn't get much prettier. PPO turning up around 0, trying to break out of this base. It didn't have a Scooter ranking while it was a very weak stock down here. It got too small in the market cap. And now as it's improved in its market cap size, it's starting to pick up. But this bounce right here, after going down to the full stows at 20, this bounce at 50 is usually associated with bull market behavior. And we haven't really seen that in the stock here. Maybe once right in here. But this looks to me like the stock has based and is now setting up a higher level and wants to go from there. And much like climbing Everest, it's in a series of base camps. And this looks like it's just setting up its first major base after the first one. So you've had a rise and now the second one, and then you'd be watching for something to extend up higher. So I like these kind of charts that set up like this. Look at the PPO has been positive for a year and a half now, just dips briefly below 0 and wants to start turning up. It's breaking this long downtrend in momentum. There's all kinds of things I like about this chart, and you can set your stop nice and close. If it doesn't hold the breakout, just let somebody else own it. So that's just an idea on some of the ways to look at that. And again, what you want to watch for when you see these stocks is you want bases to be setting up and breaking out. I have trouble buying the ones that are fully extended. Some people can buy, whatever was the top performer last month, they just keep owning it. And that can work too. That's a full-blown trading strategy, and feel free to try and look at that. Maybe pick 3 or 4 names in a space and start to watch those names go forward. Okay, I've sorted this gambling sector or gambling industry by just a 1-week performance here. And so when you do that, you just click on these tabs and you can change the direction. But I think the most important thing that we want to watch for is obviously something that started to move, and the Century Casinos just broke out. So this is kind of a nice, it broke above that 2 or 3 month base just in the last couple of days here. Might have even been yesterday. And what we're watching for is these stocks start to go, is the whole sector or industry group going to go? And I think that's one of the bigger things to be aware of. And if they're starting to move, that can be helpful. So here's Boyd Gaming, and it's been downtrending for a while. So that one, if it could start to break above 30, maybe that's something worth looking at. I wrote about Wynn in the Don't Ignore This chart yesterday. And one of the things about Wynn Resorts is this stock trends really well both directions. So downtrend, this uptrend in here was pretty good. Bit of a pullback there in March, but in general, pretty nice uptrend. And now we've had a steep pullback, and it looks like it wants to go. So one of the things I like about stocks like this is when they trend well. And if we look at it on a bigger picture, missed one here. If we look at it on a bigger picture, what we see here is this downtrend, big uptrend, downtrend, choppy or uptrend with that little dip in there, and then pulled back, and now it looks to me like it's setting up, and the PPO is setting up right near zero, and you can see this happen back in here, and it looks to me like it wants to go forward. So when you see this sort of price action, I like the fact that the full stochastic is turning up again. And again, I want to look for weekly time frame trades. So if this is going to start to run, this to me, this is where I want to enter it. And so I'd enjoy that a lot more than in entering something that's got a big spike on the chart and trying to get involved there. So I like this pullback. And again, the $100 level goes back over into here. And so there's other types of support that we're seeing on the chart. All of these are just different ways to trade them. But the point I want to make on these is they're starting to set up in bases. This one's trying to make a higher low. Las Vegas Sands trying to make a higher low. So as we go through this, El Dorado Resorts just breaking out this week. What's not to like about that chart? To new 52-week highs, just getting going. It's a small cap, so be cautious on position size. This Stars group, they own PokerStars.net and a whole bunch. I would expect this chart to start behaving better. Has not, but it's one to keep on the list. This Caesars Entertainment Group is really starting to shape up nicely, breaking to new 6-month highs this week. So there's another example of something that's just getting going. MGM Resorts, it wouldn't take much for this scooter ranking to start to pick up. It is sitting near, let's call it 10-month highs going back to last September, and a quick breakthrough $29 here, and I think you probably have the setup that you want. If we go look at this just on a bigger picture chart, what I want to see is this scooter ranking or this PPO start to make a higher low and head higher. The chart doesn't have a lot of vertical range. For the last 3 years, it's traded between 22 and 36, which isn't bad. But, in the last year, it's traded within I'll call it a 50% range. A lot of things you might want a little bit more thrust. So maybe like that Wynn Resorts chart looks a little more aggressive. Okay, going back through these names here, Churchill Downs, this one's been on fire, just literally launched. That's a big move. And this Inspired Entertainment just starting to get going again. Small cap, no scooter ranking, real difficult. But Red Rock Resorts, and I think it's pretty quick to just highlight these. And maybe I should show how we get to this page to just go look through these areas of the market. But these other charts here, just to finish up, not great, and nothing I really want to own. So be pretty selective here. I did mention the Fed meeting earlier, and I think one of the concerns I have is, we're in a situation where the data is breaking down, but everybody wants to stay long, and I get it. I'm long too, and just make sure that you're protected. So if this market does let go, there's lots of reasons to have bigger issues here. Okay, so what I did there was I went to the homepage, and on the homepage, or your dashboard page, I scroll down. See, this is charting tools, and below charting tools is reports. I go into sector summary. I know that gambling is in consumer discretionary. It's not exactly a consumer staple. And then of these, down here is gambling, and you can just go grab the chart. And by clicking on that list, that's going to bring them all up. And again, feel free to sort them. Depending on the type of trading style you have, these charts on the intraday, all pulling back just a little bit after the big thrust yesterday. But I think it's pretty important to look for the big picture, what's starting to set up. And I like the way these are starting to turn. The other thing that I find about the gambling stocks is because Macau is such a big part of the gambling business and for profits, if China's doing well, Macau will probably start to improve. If we go look at the Shanghai composite chart, this chart has a really interesting thing. It's been sitting down here with a negative PPO for almost a year. It rallied up. So again, the tariff started last year. It rallied up, and it's coming down. And if it starts to bounce off this zero level, this is the place to get bullish on Shanghai, not the place to get bearish. So very interesting point here that we want to watch for. It's holding above its 40-week moving average. It's been going sideways for 6 weeks. After the original move down in early May on the back of the announcement that they weren't able to sign an agreement right away. But nobody's giving up on this. It's holding in quite tight here. And I think regardless of the rhetoric that we hear through the media, watch the charts. But this is starting to set up as well. And I think that would help lean us into these gambling names at a pretty important time. And if something happens towards the end of month or into July, we might find those gambling names perk right up and can give us a nice long run for perhaps a year or two. And I think we'd all enjoy that sort of a ride. Okay, the last thing I want to cover off just real briefly is that we have Fed meeting today. We have quadruple witching on Friday, which just means Friday will be one of the highest volume days of the year. Doesn't have to be the highest, but it'll be one of the those 4 days are usually the highest, the quadruple witching that happens once a quarter. So thanks for taking the time to join me on Market Buzz. Market Buzz airs Wednesday and Friday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can also see the recordings on Stock Charts TV YouTube page. And I do a weekend show, so you can check those out on the Stock Charts YouTube page as well. Thanks for taking the time to join me. Have a great trading week.